Have you ever had someone reach out to you wanting to go on a Sasquatch specific hunt? We are live from the center of the earth. What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Trap House Ted. Tonight's been a long time coming. I've got a really special guest here. He's a veteran author of The Glass Factory, and maybe the kindest person you'll meet on the internet, and arguably the last great man of the American West. It's my pleasure to introduce to you, Mr. Braxton McCoy. What's going on, dude?
Well, things are good, but I'm definitely not. Most of that was fluff. That's not true. No. Most people are better at like almost everything than me. So,
that's highly up for debate. But Citizen Hush, the resident fluffer.
Oh my gosh! Here we are.
Yeah, dude,
okay.
Long time no see. We were on for like 4 hours talking on Zoom Friday night.
Yeah, I learned a bunch of like nerd stuff. It was awesome, and I learned a lot about you. That was really fun. Because of course we're pals or whatever. So, but yeah, it was cool to learn like a little bit of stuff about you too. I know you're not ready to like divulge it, but I was like, man, he's pretty cool. You know, he pretends to be like a nerd, but he's pretty damn cool.
Yeah. That story is like maybe 3 years away from breaking. But most of the folks who come on Trap House 10 get like that purview into it just because it's like a safe space. But that's
Sure.
I'm playing that card close to my chest, but like we talked about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thanks for coming on, dude. And so I know you're already acclimated with how this little segment runs. My poor excuse for a podcast because I can't have one without adult supervision. But yeah, so basically the rules of engagement here is largely like it's not confined to 10 questions. I just use the 10 questions as kind of like the foundation. And we can go on tangents, dude. Like on Friday night, we went on many tangents together.
We were supposed to be on for 45 minutes, end up 4 hours. And then yeah,
it was a good time. But yeah, feel free, if any of us like this is your platform to really just kind of talk to folks and
send me that. Send me that password and that login and
yeah, just to fast track the YouTube demonetization.
Yeah, you're right. Never mind. I don't want it. I'm gonna actually I'll take yours and I'll just blow it up as I blow mine up. You know?
There you go. You actually might be depending on the content. Like what was it? If you were to hijack my YouTube channel, you might be the first cowboy that's ever been demonetized on YouTube.
You know, it's funny. It's like my kids watch like stuff, you know, like YouTube stuff or whatever. Mm-hmm. And yeah, after we talked, I was like, oh, these boys are like, this is pretty smart, you know, putting that stuff out. Cause it's like super child friendly. Like, how would it not be? It's just like roping cows and starting colts and all kind of stuff. So yeah, I probably would be the first one, but it would actually kind of be fitting, to be honest with you. Cause it's kind
of goes with the path you walk, man.
Yeah, it does. Unfortunately, my mom would tell you that.
So let's go ahead and jump in. So the first question, this was actually, there were multiple people that had questions about this, and I kind of followed the debate. I think it started a month ago, maybe longer. But the people want to know, what's the deal with Sasquatch? Are you hiding him? have you ever seen him? What's the truth? Like we gotta settle this.
Okay. Here's the thing with Sasquatch. I have people that I respect and love and stuff that believe in Sasquatch, and they'll all tell you this story about this thing that they found, you know, and these are like good, hardworking dudes. Like my uncle, who I love, I'm not gonna say his name because I got a couple of them, but I got an uncle that I love, and he's got a Squatch story that he tells me about, and like when he found this Squatch bed and stuff. And what usually happens is It's people who spend an adequate, well, it's not always, but like with the credible stories, what usually happens is someone who spent enough time out to like know more, way more than the average person, and they seem like super credible, but it's still like a person who like doesn't know as much as maybe even they think that they know. So like, okay, so this example, my uncle, he goes, I saw a weird thing, and then I found this squatch bed one time. And he starts telling me about how these trees was broke off, like about yay high, and they was broke off and like kind of piled into sort of a bed looking shape. Well, guess what? Black bears do that. And a lot of people don't know that because they don't get around a lot of bears. So he's like, has this in his head where like this is a crazy thing. He's like, oh, I've been around black bears my whole life. Well, yeah, I mean, you sort of have, like you've been in black bear territory, but you've never like spent a lot of time around black bears, so you don't even know like what they do. You know what I mean? Or they'll find like a tree that's like barked. Mm-hmm. It's been barked in like this. Well, black bears will mark their territory like that. And grizzlies will do a similar thing sometimes too, where they'll go around, like they'll say, hey, this here is my territory. And they'll find like a white bark pine or like a lodgepole pine. And it'll be like maybe, I don't know, like a 5-inch circumference tree. And they'll break it off as tall as they can break it off with their jaws to like show the other bears like this is how big I am, and they'll make like a perimeter or whatever. Well, to someone who's not around that stuff, it goes, whoa, they start to think like, whoa, that's weird. Like, why would a bear do that? But they do. Like, it's like their thing, so they'll add all these little pieces in to their little like squatch fantasy, and it's just like, basically, I guess what I'm driving at here is everything, usually almost every time when I hear, this is my, X squatch evidence, it's always super easy to like discount, like, just debunk, I guess. And then sometimes people will send me pictures, and these are not like dumb people, right? But they'll send me pictures and be like, here's a track in the snow. Why don't you explain that track? I'm like, well, yeah. Have you ever looked at the hind foot of a bear? It's like, that's what it looks like, dude. Like, that's what you just sent me. Like, well, where's the claws? It's like, bro, okay. Like, go outside and stick your hand in the snow and shove it down deep, just do that. And then come back in like 2 weeks and look at it and see what it looks like. And then maybe you'll like have a better. So anyway, I guess it comes from, I have all of these, every time someone sends me this evidence, it's always like stupid evidence. And it's like, I'll never be rude to them because I understand where they're coming from, but it's like evidence that's sort of like majorly uninformed. Mm-hmm. And then tack onto that I've spent like hours and hours and hours and hours and hours out there by myself, like hours and hours. And I've never seen anything that made me think there was like a squatch.
Yeah,
like I've just never run into this thing. And then people say like bones, this is one of my favorites. Be like, well, have you ever run into bear bones? Like, yeah, I've got I literally have pictures on my, like, I find them every year, dude. Yes, literally. Yeah,
bears die too.
Yeah, and it turns out that if you spend enough time out there, and yeah, you're not, you got to spend a lot of time to run into stuff like that. That's true. And you got to be off trails, but yeah, you're going to run into stuff like it. And so sometimes I'll tell people like, bro, I know where I can go find fish fossils on the top of the mountain. I don't know how old they are because I'm not like a geologist, but they're pretty gosh darn old. And I can go pick fish fossils at like 7,000 feet. Or maybe even higher, 9,000 feet. There's one spot I know of. I don't want to tell you where it's at, but there's one spot I know of that I can go find fish fossils all day long that are at roughly 9,000 feet.
Jeez.
I can find that, but I can't find any squatch evidence, like not anywhere. And some people say some silly stuff like, well, that's because they bury their dead. Well, guess what, man? Like, that's not how this works. So every year, like, let me just put it out. So every year in those steep areas, what happens is especially if it depends on the winter, right? But there's just avalanches going over and over and over again. So the soil is really unstable. So there's no such thing as like ancient soil outside of like certain pockets, you know? So this idea that burying something was going to somehow hide it or whatever, it doesn't. I mean, unless you went out in the flat and buried it out in the flat. And then if you did that, like, you're going to have a trail of evidence. Like, okay, every once in a while, we have a grizzly will go through like this one certain area, and someone hears about it every time. And this one certain area should not have any grizzlies in it. And someone hears about it every time, whether it's a track or, you know, maybe even saw the bear, but it's usually like a track or, you know, saw some piece of evidence. Because like grizzlies, they'll clean their claws on pine trees. You know, they'll reach up and, you know, when they eat on something or whatever, their claws get dirty. They'll clean them out, and it looks like they're like, you know, being nasty or whatever. But all they're doing is clean their stuff out. So you'll find like some evidence or whatever, this bear, and then people start looking or whatever. Well, Squatch, just like, it's never anything. You know what I mean? Like, it's, I don't know. Like, put it like this: my job a lot of times is to look for bulls, like really big bulls. There's a lot of elk around, but finding like a really big bull is a hard thing to do. You know, you spend a bunch of time looking for sign and all this stuff, and you find that one bull, and then keeping a hold of that bull is sort of hard, but it's easier than people think. Like, if you know what you're doing, you know what I mean? And now you're picking one animal out of a group of a whole bunch of animals. And I can do that, but like, no Squatch, you know. I'm just trying to say, it's like, I don't know, man. There's no Squatch, and people who think that there's a Squatch are dorks, and they're nerds, and they're afraid of the dark, and they want to like justify their fear of the dark because they put their tent up, and they're like, well, they're like rationalizing their fear away. You know, there could be this very scary, I also love that Squatch is like this humanoid. He's not even he's not even like an actual ape. He's a very human ape, you know? So it's like, I don't know. It just feels like rationalizing their stuff. And did Tech put you up to this? Did this come from Tech?
Oh yeah, he was one of them. And then I think there were like 3 or 4 other people who asked questions about Sasquatch. I just threw them all together.
There's no Squatch.
Tonight we have squatched the Sasquatch myth. Also that actually leads me to another question that I had. So you do a lot, or you used to do a lot of guiding, right? Have you ever had someone reach out to you wanting to go on a Sasquatch specific hunt?
No. Well, until I started talking crap about Squatch on Twitter, and then I do get weird DMs from people now. Like, they're like, I want to show you my Squatch evidence. All you got to do is come up to, you know, X place or whatever.
Market Street, San Francisco.
Yeah, it's absolutely absurd. And they're like, well, maybe what you don't understand is that Squatch lives in this part of the country. It's like, okay, well, maybe it does, because I haven't been there. So, you know, I can't speak to that little corner of Oklahoma, and maybe that's where he lives. But, you know, he don't live here. Let me put it like that. So, and when I say here, I mean like the Rocky Mountains. Yeah, he's not here. Dude, right. I will go through. Let me just put it. I will go through, and I will hike into some place that I think, like, you know, you have that feeling like, man, no one's been here ever, maybe. Like, if they have, it's been a long time ago, you know. And I'll get way back into something, and I'll sit down and try to eat lunch, and you know what's always there? Like a sardine can, or a freaking. You'll find like a random bullet. You know, when you start looking around, or a casing, you know, you'll find like a random casing from like a 270 from like 1964 or some shit. Like, there's always been someone there before, even though you think there have, you know.
A 6.5 Creedmoor casing from the Cambrian explosion.
Okay, now that's one thing. You won't find a 6.5 Creedmoor in a real hard place, because most of those dudes are nerds, and they think they're cool, and they hunt super low stuff.
Shots fired.
Is what it is. They usually have man buns.
Man buns, yeah. Well,
super skinny calves.
I've got a 6'5" Creedmoor, and I used to have a man buns.
Well, there you go. The proof is in the pudding. I don't have one, but I actually kind of want one. So.
They look cool. They look cool before they became mainstream, like most things. All right,
a good round.
Let me get I meant man buns. So we're going up on the question 2. Now that we've squashed the Sasquatch myth, my good friend, I'm sure you know him too, High Tech Redneck. I think his handle is Rootin' Tootin'. He wants to know, this is getting a little more serious. What he wants to know what it's like to live by your principles, and what advice do you have for others to live by their principles? Man, that just killed the vibe. Like, we were just making jokes about 6'5" Creedmoor guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to learn how to do it. I knew a few men that did it. My grandpa did it. You know, I'm trying. I think I'm like a principled-ish man, but I'm learning how to live. Like I'm working at that. So I guess I try. And I guess, let me put it like this. It's giving up on something that would be lucrative, but would like sacrifice you to do it, you know? Yeah, so I have that part down, but I don't have a lot of the other parts down. So I guess I'm not like really the man to answer the question. I try, but I'm not there yet. I'm trying, you know. And the first thing you'd have to have is principles that are codified. And I think I've got that. And that takes work, by the way, to get to that point, you know.
I mean, I've known you for a while now, man. And like, one thing that is abundantly clear is you're incredibly humble. And when people particularly start talking about characteristic traits like having principles and being a man or a person of principle, like I've always thought like things like that are words you let other people describe you by versus words you describe yourself by. I admire that a lot about you, because there are a lot of great things that myself and others have said about you, and like you've lived the story, bro. And a lot of folks wouldn't take as humble of an approach as you do. And I think that the fact that you're not tempted to kind of toot your own horn and put yourself up on a pedestal like a lot of other folks we've seen really speaks to your credit as well as your principles. So, I mean, I think it's a really powerful characteristic trait you have. And I admire it a lot about you. I know many thousands of other people do too.
Well, thank you.
Is this the
I'll
part?
Keep trying.
Is this the part? Is this the part where we're supposed to kiss? I'm not sure.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like I hear that, and I just think about all the times I fail every day. You know what I mean? So it's just like, well, I appreciate that, but
you're an example, bro. Whether you want it, whether you're trying to be or not. All right. Question number 3. This one might be a little more fun. And it's coming from FKA Aaron on Twitter. Aaron wants to know, what are Braxton's top 10 list of books or experiences he would recommend for parents of sons becoming men? Now, in the interest of time, and also because I don't want to have to like sit here and make you think of 10 books or experiences, let's round that down to 3.
Okay. I think that every boy should read the book The Crossing.
I'm writing that down.
I think that's a useful book for any boy. It's, you know, it's the middle of the Border trilogy from Cormac McCarthy, but it's a really good, I think it's just, I think that's a book that every boy should read. I mean, there's a bunch of books that I think are useful, but then another one that I do think is useful, but it's going to depend a lot on the boy. That I do think is useful is another McCarthy book, Blood Meridian.
Oh,
and it's hard. It definitely, that book affected me on levels that I wasn't expecting it to. I read it later in life. Honestly, I'm still kind of processing that book. But yeah, so that would be one. And then I guess it depends a lot on the boy, right? Where he's at. Like somebody, you could learn a lot from somebody like Michael Jordan, I forget the name of his autobiography, but I read that years ago, and you could learn a lot even from that. But so far as experiences go, I do think that everybody should be put in a very uncomfortable position and just learn how their body and mind can really just learn get closer to the limits of that body and mind. So I think like a gym, like say you're in a city or something. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is great. I'm a fan of it. I think it's awesome, but it's more of a gentle thing. I mean, it's not always gentle, right? But like the idea behind it is sort of like the gentle, art, but you're learning you could do whatever you want. Like you could actually end a person's life with BJJ. But I just mean like getting into a gym, and I do think that learning how to be punched in the face, and that you can survive that, and like you're not going to die even if somebody hits you really hard. I think that's an experience that every boy should have, no matter where he's at, like whether he's in the city or the country. Yeah, so I mean, there's a million. I shouldn't say a million. There's a handful I would recommend above that, but I do think that those would be 3 great places to start.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, Cormac McCarthy, one of the first things I thought about when your book was delivered to my house through Amazon, and then the first time we like talked one-on-one, I was like, this dude could be a character in a Cormac McCarthy book.
Oh my gosh.
And not the one you're thinking of in Blood Meridian.
Well, my friend Grandpa is the one that turned me on to that book. Like, I mean, I knew of the book, but like forced me into reading it.
Yeah,
it is a great book. Yeah, I mean, All the Pretty Horses I probably read that book 30 times, but I do think that The Crossing is more, All the Pretty Horses is very, like if you grew up specifically on a horse ranch, like I did, that book, there's a lot of profundity in there, but the Crossing is more like, it's just deeper for just anyone, particularly that scene at the broke down church in the middle of Mexico, so yeah, it's a book that everybody should read. It's like every man should read.
And getting punched in the face, like what you were talking about, like being able to like shake that off and be like, okay, that happened, now what? I survived. Like that's a lesson like that was forced on me. Well, I wouldn't say it's forced. That's too dramatic. But like, so with ocean Mexican knife fighting and stuff, like one of the first one of the first things you learn in Filipino knife fighting is accept that you're gonna get cut. You're going to get cut, and it's gonna be messy. And like even getting cut the first time, like you there's a sharp pain, but like you move past it, and like it hurts more after the fact than it does like in the moment. Just like getting punched. I've been punched in the face many times.
Sure.
But yeah, I totally agree with that. Let's see. Net question number 4. We've got this one's coming from Thoramir1, our buddy back on Twitter. He wants to know, what does Braxton think of tactical onesies, particularly those of the Snorlax variety?
I mean, that's your thing.
I think he's trying to get you to talk shit about
it. Yeah, I mean, whatever, man. As long as you're staying fit, fine. Like, I mean, the thing about all this, I'm not in a position to give anyone tactical advice, right? So like I try to, but don't be fat. That's one thing I'm willing to go out on a limb on this one. Like, so
I think
whatever you want, but just don't be fat.
Yeah, don't actually become a Snorlax.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, next one we've got coming in hot from our friend Midwest Toad. He wants to know, what's your favorite cut of beef and how does he like it cooked? So I feel like this might be a wormhole. So let's learn something.
Depends on what we want, man. Like, are we talking steaks? Because if we're talking steaks, then it's ribeye all day. And it's rare, but it's like that between medium rare and rare. Like sometimes people try to flex on the rare thing. Like I love rare meat, but they'll try to flex on it. It's like, oh, I eat rare meat. It's like, come on, man, at least cook it. But like at least warm it up, right? So somewhere less than medium rare, because the other thing you get is a lot of people doing like they call medium rare. It's like, man, you're cooking like it's too cooked. So somewhere between the two, yeah. So if you're talking steaks, that's what I would say. But then it's like, we're talking tacos, because if we're talking tacos, then it's like tongue all day long.
Oh, hell yeah.
All day, all freaking day long.
On behalf of the Ocean Mexican delegation, I now grant Braxton McCoy honorary Ocean Mexican status.
Yeah, man. So yeah, it just depends on what you want. I mean, there's no one great cut of beef. It depends on what you're doing with it. There are, you just have to learn how to utilize the animal. I love a good roast on Sunday, making a nice Sunday roast and some nice mashed potatoes and stuff. Like that's pretty cool too. Sourdough, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it just depends on what you're looking for. But yeah, if we're talking steaks, it's ribeye. Anyone who says it's not ribeye is lying to you, because ribeye is prime rib that wasn't turned into a big old chunk of stuff. It's like a cut down prime rib. That's the best steak. And then the best taco meat is tongue. Yeah. Anyway, that's what I would say. I mean, there's a whole bunch of cuts in there. Like when I break them down, I think about it all the time. But yeah, and then like flank steaks, a lot of people will try to do the flank steak thing, but that's all. Like all that should just be ground. Just grind it up, because then there's a lot of great, ground beef tacos are great too. Like there's no reason to try to play this game where you cube up a flank steak. Forget that. Grind that and just make a ground beef taco. So it's like that.
Now, as far as for going back to the ribeye, are you a salt, pepper, oil only guy, or how do you season it? Okay, cool.
Yeah, same. Yeah, no, all day. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you want to put like a little horseradish on the side, and you want to be a nerd and okay, then fine. Like I'm not gonna criticize you for that, but it's lame. Like it's not necessary.
The fact that that your preference is the same as mine. I may have recovered half of a point from the 6'5" Creedmoor admission earlier.
It was the man bun that was the real problem. I don't care what round you shoot.
Oh man!
Anyone who wears their hair like that and isn't a samurai should be made fun of for the rest of their life.
So when I had one, the word man bun didn't really exist, and so I just called it a samurai bun. That's what I called it. Okay. So maybe I get a quarter point.
Fine. I'll allow it.
All right. And then for question 6, we've got it from I'm pretty sure he's a mutual. I don't know how to pronounce his handle, whether it's Spanish or if it's English, but it's either on Vacayo or on Vacao. But he wants to know. So you and Grandpa recently went on a wolf hunt, right?
We did.
So our man over here, he wants to know if you and Grandpa ever found any wolves to dance with.
Yeah, I hate that movie, but no, we didn't. No, we didn't. We were definitely like on wolves, but I shouldn't say on wolves. We were in the right place or whatever. The one place that we went out, we run into another guy that was out there that I know. They had a elk kill in the valley that we were trying to get into, but it was tough. So this time of year, this is the thing. I think a lot of people don't understand. In order to just get even into the mountain right now, you've got to cross at least 1.5 miles, 2 miles or so of Valley 4. And that Valley 4, you have to snowshoe across it. And that Valley 4's, 2.5 feet of snow. So it's tough just to even get to the base of the mountain. Then you got to start hunting. So that was a big part of our issues. It takes a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And like everyone thinks they can are ready for it and get it or whatever, but it's almost impossible to understand until you start, and then you have to add in too that you're starting at, like, if you're like where we're at, your valley floor is starting at like 7,000 feet, 6,500, 7,000. So you got to factor in elevation, and then it's hard. It's really, really hard. And
so drilling into that, one thing I was curious about, and I know a lot of folks who are going to be listening and don't know anything about hunting wolves, myself included. So like one of the obvious questions that's going to pop up in the comments, I'm sure, is why hunt wolves? So I'd love to hear your take on that. And then also, like, this is more my curiosity, is like, is hunting wolves a spot and stalk type game, or do you use like any types of callers as well, or what's that process look like?
So we can't use electronic calls where I live, so I hand call everything. So yeah, but I do call a lot, but it's better, like, you got to find a track and start on a track and then start calling, otherwise you're just hollering at nothing, right? So, but yes, I do call a lot. And then why? Well, the area that we were at, a good friend of mine has a ranch right there, and they lost 40 cattle, cows and calves, just last year to wolves. So that's a good reason to, as far as I'm concerned. And then so people will do this, so I'm just going to tell them. Yes. Okay. There's a depredation money that gets paid, right, from the state and like Cattlemen's Association and stuff. But guess what it turns out to be? Once that pool is like spread out, a couple of years ago, when they got paid out on those, it was $20 per head. So yeah, okay. I guess they got money from the state, but it's almost like a slap in the face, because every cattle, every individual cow that got killed or whatever, I mean, you're talking, it depends on which got killed and how old they were and that kind of stuff, but still it's at least $1,000 per head, but it's probably quite a lot more. And then it's like however much that cow, or, well, if it's a steer, then, but anyway, you get it. Like, individually, if it's a cow or a heifer, it's what it would have produced through the rest of its life too. You have to tag on. It's a business. So every time one of those dies, let's say a heifer calf gets killed. Well, she would have produced for at least 8 years, and maybe even 10, maybe even a little longer, but probably at least 8 years. So it's every offspring of her all the way through. So, I mean, it's crushing for a ranch. It's like, it's a big problem.
Yeah, cattle ain't cheap, and because I know, because I've had to pay for one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, this is something we talked about Friday night too, about like predator hunting, because I hunt coyotes also. I don't know, some people consider hogs predators. I don't really consider them predators. They're 99% vegetarian, I believe, if you exclude insects. But like predator control, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, like what that's like in your corner of the world, because like a lot of folks, particularly in cities, like they think of just like their myopic perspective of why would you go out and shoot a coyote, Citizen Hush? Like that's a terrible thing. And then I get all sorts of flack for anything on that nature. And I'd love to hear the perspective of someone who lives this day to day, like not just like the like what the importance, I think, of keeping an ecosystem in balance and having that natural pressure.
You have to understand right from the jump that there is no natural ecosystem left. There is none. And everyone who gets on me about this I'm sorry, they just don't understand. Everywhere we have our cities, agricultural land, all of that, that is where these animals would not just winter, but lived. Like, think of when Lewis and Clark came across the Bitterroot and were saved by the Nez Perce, which is just like 70-ish miles north of where I'm at, something like that. they almost starved to death. They were eating their own colts as they crossed it because there is no animals up there outside of like mountain goats and a handful of sheep, but mostly just mountain goats, you know? Mm-hmm. So these game animals were plains animals, like almost all of them. They were river bottoms, plains animals. Well, we occupy the river bottoms and the plains. So we have shoved these animals into the mountains and pretended as if that's a natural ecosystem. It's not a natural ecosystem. It never has been a natural ecosystem. So the idea that we are preserving something that's natural is just silly. It's just incorrect. It's just not true. So now you've like, if you accept all of that, which would be ridiculous not to, if you accept all of that, then you understand that you're already playing a role, whether you want to or not. Just your mere existence on this planet is playing a role in the way these, you know, in the everyday, like the ecosystem itself, put it like that. You can't opt out. You're part of it, you know? So then you have to accept that predator control is like a real thing. And you'll see people say, well, when we stopped doing, you know, when we introduced wolves into Yellowstone, it cleaned up the river because it got less elk, you know, it reduced the elk herd to less elk. And so we look at what wolf recovery in Yellowstone, you know, looked like. Well, yeah, okay. But at the time, when the elk were like something like 700,000 elk in just Yellowstone National Park, it was, yeah, there's way too many. It's like, duh. Like, it's just, yeah, that's a ridiculous amount of elk because it's the small valleys that will, you know, sort of support them through the winters. So, yeah, it's like a ridiculous amount of elk. But it wasn't exactly the wolves that, okay, yes, the wolves were the mechanism that reduced, you know, the elk herd, and so it looks like this is this great beneficial thing. And it was, I guess, it was not, I guess, it was beneficial, but that doesn't mean that you have to use that same mechanism throughout the rest of the entire country, because when you introduce that mechanism back, the wolves or grizzly bears or something, then now you have unnecessarily human predator conflict for just like literally no reason. Like Colorado's doing this right now. Yeah. There's just no reason to do this. We have been using humans as a sort of predator, regulatory predator, and it's worked for a long time, a very long time. So another thing, elk elk used to occupy something like 90% of the states. You know, they were all over and they've been wiped out. Well, the only reason they've recovered in places like Kentucky or Pennsylvania or whatever is because hunters have put money into this, you know, and have like made them recover, you know. So like obviously introducing the human predator in a very regulated sense has, you know, been objectively beneficial to this new modern ecosystem. Mm-hmm. You have to give up this idea that you're somehow going to get back to this old. It's never going to happen. It's like, it's not real. Even Yellowstone's fake cell. It's not. Yellowstone's not real. Like, it's not real. It's managed. You know, mm-hmm. There is no, anyway. The closest you can get, like if you go up to like the North Slope of Alaska or something, then sure, you're going to experience basically a roughly natural ecosystem. But when you go up there, like my brother-in-law was up there just a couple of years ago, like you might be up there for a week and not see a thing, you know. So you got to remember too, like the herds are imbalanced the way they are, like they're probably more than there should be even now because we're, you know. So anyway, you can't remove yourself from the ecosystem. So that in my opinion at least, like devastates the idea that somehow wolves are this balancing act, because they're just not. Mm-hmm. Like it's an additional pressure. Fine, you want to introduce an additional pressure, then fine, but it's going to have to be regulated like the rest of it. And if you don't, then yeah, you're going to run into problems for every species. So yeah, I can't remember where we started, but yeah, that's why you have to shoot wolves. You have to shoot wolves. You have to shoot wolves. You have to. Wolves are not like coyotes. They're not like bears, grizzlies. Even people make a lot more of grizzlies than is like legit.
Mm-hmm.
Wolves are a totally different thing. Wolves will totally just kill stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They will just kill stuff because they like killing stuff.
Yeah,
they will totally do that.
And that's super interesting. And I know, like, on Friday night we were talking about, like, what was it? The Frederick Hayek quote about the curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they truly know about things they imagine they can design. And an ecosystem is an example of that. So, like,
yes.
you've got an economy where you have millions and billions of individuals going after their own needs and wants, and then you create this thing called an economy. Whereas an ecosystem, it's the same thing. And when you start introducing new variables that you think you can control and you can, predict how it will behave, like you're playing with dangerous shit you can't take back.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Like, let me give you another example. In this whole Green New Deal thing, they're always talking about, like, methane expulsion from cattle, right? It depends on which number you believe. And I tend to think that Dan Flores was probably right. So it's probably the lesser number. But some people will say there was 60 million bison that traveled from all the way from Mexico all the way up to Alberta, across the Great Plains. Well, we did, as a culture, eradicate those bison. And then, of course, we've worked to recover them in some places, but they're eradicated, right? But we replace those with cattle that we feed people with all the time. So this idea that somehow getting rid of cattle is, like, beneficial to the environment forgets that there maybe used to be somewhere between 15 and 60 million buffalo that are bison. If you're an American, you call them buffalo, but that traveled from, it roamed the Great Plains. Mm-hmm. Well, we it's not just they're gone, they're replaced. Like, yeah, okay, like we could maybe try to play this Garden of Eden game where it's like, yeah, it would have been better to have not replaced them. Well, maybe, I don't know.
That's not the scenario we're in.
But here we are.
Yeah, exactly.
And people like eating beef. And so, like, blaming the increase in global temperature on, beef makes no sense if you add in that we probably had slightly less, but roughly as many bison running across this country before. But no one knows that. So they just hear the beef part, and it's easy to blame this culture. But it's like, well, yeah, but it's not, these things are not happening in a vacuum, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Real
life doesn't happen in a laboratory.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, okay, we killed off the buffalo. That wasn't great. I think buffalo are cool. I shot one before. And I know that's probably the very Teddy Roosevelt thing to say. But they are cool. I think they're neat, and having more of them would be neat and all of that. But, like, pretending as if that somehow restoring them would, like, rebalance things would just be dumb. It makes no sense at all.
Yeah,
because now you have to explain to me what you do to ranches from, or farms. Most of it's farms, by the way, farms from, like, South Dakota all the way to, the panhandle of Texas. Like, you got to explain to me what you do with that. Because, like, recovering the bison herd is what I hear all the time. Like, how are you going to do that? They don't have the same land. Like, it's gone.
Yeah.
So, and not only is it gone, but, by the way, it feeds most of the world. Like, it's not just us. Like, this is where these people drive me crazy. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hijack your.
No. This is what we're here for, bro.
Bro. So they get they live in their little bubbles in these cities, especially the big metropolitans, where they can go down to the Whole Foods or the bodega on the corner and get whatever they want. And they feel like, well, we could do with less food. That's what they think. Ultimately, they don't say that, but they're thinking it, and they're not exactly wrong. But what they don't think about is the grain, like the grain belt of America. The food that comes out of there it's literally feeding the entire world. Like, the entire and the most impoverished nations in the world are getting fed by this. So if you want to, let's say you go full authoritarian, like if AOC just had whatever she wanted, she could just have whatever she wanted, and go full kulak on that grain belt. Our country would probably end up like surviving it. So she's not exactly wrong. It wouldn't be great, but it would probably survive. But you know who wouldn't? The poorest countries in the world. And most of them, by the way, are in Africa. Mm-hmm. Those people would starve to death by the millions. They're living on, anyway. Like the bread that this country produces and the cereal. I mean, it's just, and that's not even my wheelhouse, but it's just like, just look at the numbers,
Yeah. No, and then like by proxy too, like let's say that situation you painted there where AOC gets her way. And inevitably what would end up happening is we would find some way to blame it on something else we did to justify more authoritarian control.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then what you would end up with is, because the main problem with communism is not exactly communism. Like everyone. So this is why when they say real communism has never been tried, it's not accurate. But like if they were to say real communism has never been implemented, then maybe that would be kind of true, right? Like slightly true. But it's technocracy at its root, central planning. It's like this idea that, some technocrat knows how to do it best. And if you would only let this technocrat run stuff, then we could fix the entire world, Well, problem is every time you try that, stuff goes super bad.
Like people really die. Bad.
Yeah. And by the way, if you tried that here, it wouldn't just happen here. It would happen. This is what makes American communism more dangerous than any communism ever. Is like the USSR got dumb and did a bunch of dumb stuff, but it didn't affect the rest of the globe, aside from, of course, world wars and all this stuff. But like here, it would literally be people starving in South America and in Africa, just because some people thought they knew how to do better.
Yeah,
and that's
without any accountability. Like central planners, I think it's Nassim Taleb who says, I mixed feelings about Nassim Taleb, but he was like, central bankers and central planners are the only folks who can crash the plane on Friday and still have a job on Monday. Like
exactly.
Like, oh yeah, we're gonna play God with the most important financial metric in the economy, interest rates, and let's just see what happens. And
exactly.
Good luck to your savings. And like they've got zero oversight and accountability for anything they do. So yeah, you heard it here. Fuck them central planners.
Yeah, and that's why, like, when the right goes off on communists, they're not exactly wrong. But of course, preface, very stupid horse trainer in Idaho. So like, put that caveat in there.
But, much smarter than your average metropolitan, though.
No, I don't know about that, but when they go off on communists, it's like they're talking past each other, because the communists or the non-communists, like the neoliberals that are being called communists, are kind of right. Like, I'm not a communist or whatever, but it's the worst element of communism is actually the technocracy. And absolutely what we were doing, or at least trending toward, is technocracy. So like the right is identifying the problem properly, or they're identifying the right problem, but they're speaking the wrong language, perhaps,
attacking symptoms versus underlying causes. Yeah,
there you go. That's what I think. But also, I'm stupid and I get bucked off horses for money. So, like, just keep that in the back of your mind.
And I endorse what you just said, but about technocracy and everything. But also caveat that I drink Claude's hot sauce out of the bottle for internet points.
There you go.
All right, man.
I hope he's doing well, by the way.
Oh yeah, Claude. Big shout out to you, buddy. We're all rooting for you. Let's get to question 7, and like don't like throttle yourself, man. Like we don't got a time limit here. Like I like this. I like being able to just dig into your brain. Like we mentioned it a couple times, but we stayed on Zoom the other night just chatting, and like, dude, like that you got a lot of good ideas, and really a wealth of knowledge that I want to share with the rest of my corner of the autistic 2A community. So don't worry about any time limits or anything, or go on as many rants as you want. But Stephen SC off of Twitter wants to know, how accurately does
that Steven Crowder?
No, not Steven Crowder.
I thought he was kicked off of YouTube.
No, this is
he still on Twitter? I'm teasing.
Yeah, that's the Crowder, Louder with Crowder or whatever guy. Yeah, I think he was kicked off. Yeah, but Steven wants to know, how accurately does the series Yellowstone portray life on a ranch besides the rampant murders, and why hasn't Braxton done a guest appearance on the show Yellowstone? Bonus points if you answer this with a straight face.
Well, I'm already out.
You're out.
So. Okay, I'll let y'all in on something. The majority of that show was filmed. Well, I shouldn't say a large portion of that show was filmed on this one certain ranch, and actually, the guy who owns that one certain ranch offered me a job. Well, I shouldn't say offered me a job. Has been thinking about offering me a job. And we've been in contact. We've talked to each other. Or no, okay. I've talked to the guy that works for the guy. I'm just playing with. I don't want to. Yeah, so I might end up working on that place potentially part time. He wants me to do full time. I can't do full time. Anyway, so I might even work on that place. So that's a side. None of that is accurate, other than, well, that's not true. So some parts are accurate, like the encroachment stuff is totally accurate.
What's that for those who don't?
Well, I would say I think like the spirit of encroachment, like the idea that they want to build this airport and crush this place or whatever. That part is totally true. Like that's happening across the industry because, again, technocracy. They have this idea that they can do more with less. So they are like there is a lot of that happening all the time. But I heard this was someone else's thing, but they described it as Sopranos on a ranch, and I think that's like probably the best way to describe it. So yeah, a lot of that is total bull crap. Like it's just not true. And then specifically like the horse training stuff. Yeah, I mean, he had a rope in his hand, but he like he was holding like the Honda. I'm almost tempted to go to a different room and bring a rope to show you, but
go for it, man.
Yeah, so he was holding like the. I was trying to see if I had a rope in this room, but he was trying to hold like spin the rope. He's asking the horse to move. Like what he's trying to do is there's a bunch anyway. So he's trying to get early on, he's trying to get this horse moving and stuff. And anyway, he'd grab so here's the, anyway, so the Honda on a rope is, so of course, it's a bunch of coils and there's a knot tied, right? Mm-hmm. That knot is the Honda. And then there's the mouth of it is like when someone says Honda, they mean the actual mouth of that knot. And then anyway, so you build your coils and you need like a short spoke is like a good thing. Like if you learn how to rope a shorter spoke, it's actually kind of better, but early on it's a little hard to do it that way. But what he would do is choke up onto, like if you watch it again, he's holding like on the Honda. Well, you can't even use a rope like that. It's like not even like you can't even, yeah. So there's lots of like major problems. Aside from just, no one gets in a bunch of gunfights on ranch. Like that's another thing, but like on the actual ranching side, like another thing they would do that no one else would notice is I shouldn't say no one else, other people notice, but maybe the average person doesn't notice this. They would show like cattle in this area or whatever, and sometimes it'd be like a Jersey cow, and then sometimes it'd be like a Coriani. Like there's just not how that works. Like, like these are totally like Corianis are not beef cattle, So anyway, there's lots of problems, but I do like that they're trying to at least kind of mainstream, the problem set that the small rancher is feeling. And I don't think they even realize they're doing this, because this is where Hollywood is just always sucks. They always think that they're going to make a bad guy. Like they did this with, what's that show with Ron Swanson?
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec. They try to make this bad guy that's sort of like half likable bad guy, but it always turns out to be like everyone's favorite guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're not like trying to do favors to this industry or whatever, but they do correctly diagnose problems, so I think that's useful. And I think Parks and Rec did that, because like Parks and Rec, they had this. I don't want to get off on Parks and Rec, but I'm just trying to make the point.
Let's get off on Parks and Rec.
Okay. Well, so they tried to, like, if you think of the Ron Swanson character, it was all these nerd Hollywood folks saying like the uncle or dad or whatever that bugged him would be like this is how he would react to that or whatever, and it turns out like he's everyone's favorite person, but they're just stuck in their like Hollywood bubble. So they don't understand, like they're trying to write that guy as like not a good guy, like, but it just turns out he's the guy that people like,
Yeah.
Well, I think they did that again with like Yellowstone, but they added in a lot of Hollywood dumb stuff. But I do think that they showed what happens to like the average, rancher in the West right now. It's like one of the things that's happening is people are trying to exit these bigger places. So they're like picking off parcels, and like they're driving, what they're doing, they might not even think this, but what they're doing is like land speculating. So they're driving prices up, but they have no know-how at all. And this is where it's technocracy again, right? But they're driving up land prices, and the people who could afford to use that land to help like feed folks can't buy it anymore, because some guy, let's say he's an engineer or some shit for, Microsoft or IBM or something. He just buys it because he's like, well,
I want it.
Well, boy, that seems cheap or whatever. So he buys it, but then it goes to dirt and it's just useless. Can't do anything with. And then he sells it. He didn't lose anything. What does he care? He spent like, he probably lost like $50,000 on the deal at the end of the day. Well, what it did was like drive the average person out. So I do think that, or not just average person, but like drove the person who knew how to use it out, So I do think we're like, they diagnosed the problem in the right way, but they didn't mean to.
Yeah.
Like I think John Dutton was supposed to be like the bad guy of the show. Like I think that's his name, John Dutton, but the Kevin Costner character. Okay. I think he was supposed to come across.
I haven't seen the show, so I don't know anything about it.
It's
worth watching. Okay.
It's actually worth watching.
Okay.
And by the way, the first 5 episodes, I was like, this is the dumbest thing in the whole world. I was sitting there with my wife, and I was just looking at her like, are you serious? Like in the, of course, in the first episode, there's like this rope and a stud. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, but I battled through that. And then it turned into like I was feeling it and I could get. But anyway, so I think they were trying to make John Dutton the bad guy. And like, I don't know, if you watch that show and think John Dutton's a bad guy, I think we just live in different worlds, because
I'll give it a couple watch. I'll watch a couple episodes. I try, just because like TV shows are such a big time sink. I try to restrain how many I watch.
No, totally, me too. I don't watch TV at all. That's the whole thing.
Yeah,
like I don't even watch TV. But my wife, well, it was my friend, and then my wife got me sucked in, and I watched it. Well, so I hope I answered that guy's question, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. Steven, if that wasn't good enough, I don't know what is, man. You're gonna have to.
Please don't DM me like 400 pages. DM me like one question. I'm very happy to answer, and then if you're cool, then I'll talk to you.
One thing that made me think of while you were talking about Hollywood and their treatment of Yellowstone. So one of I'm sure you're aware of like the recent resurgence of like the American Western. I think it's being branded as like Western noir or noir Western. The Christian Bale, I think No Country for Old Men was probably one of the early ones. And then you've got, I forget what it was called. It was the Christian Bale
Hostels.
movie. Yeah, Hostels.
I fell asleep, but yeah.
Really? Yeah. So I don't want to ask. I figure the answer is probably the same for across anything Hollywood does. That's why I don't usually ask questions about like how accurate things were. But as far as like your favorite movie about the American West, we know it's not Dancing with the Wolves already.
No, I hate that show.
What's one that you'd recommend?
The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Ooh, I haven't seen that. I'm actually
that would be my go-to.
And I'm Googling it right now. Did I see that? No, I did not. Okay, well, I'm gonna add that. I'm gonna watch that before Yellowstone.
So it's that, and then Angel and a Bad Man would probably be my two. That would probably be my two go-tos. Because the whole thing about the West, and of course, you know, I guess I'm biased because I have I'm working on a book about this, but yeah, its principles and the American dream were born on the frontier, you know, and sometimes that frontier was Ohio and then Texas and all that. But then when it really came to be was out here, you know. And so the stories that show that, this is where I hate when people say like, you know, obviously, John Wayne was not John Wayne. He was like Miriam something from Connecticut or whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's like the Davy Crockett thing. I don't care. Like the mythos is the part that's important, like culturally important. So I don't care. But they'll point to like Clint Eastwood and they'll say, well, Clint Eastwood's movies are better. Okay, well, I guess they're better movies, but like that's not the point, man. It's like the principles conveyed by John Ford, who was a World War II veteran, an actual World War II veteran, and you know, John Wayne through some of those Westerns were actually important. Like they really, and it wasn't like they didn't come up with them on their own. It was, they were like, that was like, if you read these journals of these guys, those were like that, those were the ideals, you know. And okay, maybe it looked pie in the sky to people that weren't here, but that is like the way people thought. And like, I don't know, that was more reflective of my grandfather's worldview than anything, you know, I've ever seen out of, you know, anything anywhere else, right? And it wasn't because he was like some John Wayne fan. It was like that's the way he saw the world, you know. So if you really want to understand the West, I would say the important part is understanding like the I don't know, the weight that's put on character, you know. And so I do think that like John Wayne is a good place to go.
We talked about this on Friday. I'd love to get your thoughts on this too, because I think this came like after we stopped on Zoom, but like you nodded to it here about the idea, American ideals weren't born in New England. They were born on the frontier. And I'd love to get you to talk a little bit more about that. Like what that means in today's society and with like some of the challenges we see today. And then like, how do you reconcile those two?
Yeah. So that's a new book, right? But,
oh damn, that's
like
my last question.
Oh, that is your last one? Okay,
yeah, no, it's all good. Do it now. It's good.
If you think about, if you ask someone, like say you're on the street or whatever, and you just run into someone, like from what I can tell, if you ask someone, like describe what Americanism is, you know, short of someone who is like an obvious political actor, but just like an average person, it like it wouldn't even matter if it's a tech person or, you know, the garbage man. Actually, you get a better answer out of the garbage man. But
agree.
If you ask any of these people, they're going to point to things like, you know, perseverance and sort of, the self-madeness, like the rugged individualism and all this stuff. That did not happen in New England. It never happened in New England. Like some people will even say, like, what it is to be an American is knowing that you're never going to quit. This is why we make fun of French people, right? Mm-hmm. Even though, like, if you like historically, like, the French surrendered before Paris, but they fought very bravely in World War One. But and I will make fun of them because I enjoy making fun of them. But they were not an unbrave. They were a brave people, Yeah. But so they will point to this, we will never quit and all this stuff. Well, I mean, listen, that wasn't born at Valley Forge, because like you'd be hard pressed to find somebody at Valley Forge that didn't want to quit, right? Like mm-hmm. That's not where that came from. That came from like being out here, homesteading, and pioneerism and all of that. That's where that came from. It was not in a war or something. It was, like taking your country. Like some of these stories I'll read in these journals are just like incredible, just like mind blowing. But it was like trying to build this thing. And, of course, seeking fortune. But back then, fortune meant like a decent living, like now when you hear fortune, people think like, how am I going to be the next, Bitcoin millionaire or something? Like
I feel like, attacked.
no, but that part's kind of cool. But I mean, like really, like it was just like being able to do your own thing, and that whole idea of freedom really happened like here, was out here. Like, one journal entry I read was this girl from Sweden, and her family was super poor, but her dad converted to Mormonism, and anyway, her mom eventually converted or whatever, and then they didn't have money to get here themselves, but they wanted to like come out west and like start a life with these, these Mormons out west. And so they saved up their money, and then they couldn't afford to like come as a family. So they sent her and her brother, her little brother, and she was like 8 and her brother was like 13. And they, so they basically, they put their life savings into just their children. They knew they would never see it, but it was just the idea of hopefully their kids would be able to have a better life, right? So they sent them over, and they were going to, and of course, Mormons had a good network, so they were going to be like at least mostly safe. But they still had to cross the freaking ocean, mm-hmm. And they get over. Well, her brother dies on the trip, gets sick, like however many other people, like lots and lots of other people crossing the ocean. So he dies, and then she ends up in St. Louis, and she's just this little old 8-year-old girl with only the money her family sent her with, so like almost nothing, right? But thankfully, she's in like this Mormon network where at least she's not, in some situation where she's going to get like, she's sort of taken care of. Like she's not going to get raped and sold into slavery, mm-hmm. Put it like that. So she's sort of cared for, but she's having to work for everything, so she has this tiny little bit of savings, but she gets a job with this family in St. Louis, this Mormon family, and they're hiring her to help her, and hiring in quotes, like they're using her to help their family get their run to Utah put together. And she works for them for 2 years and saves up her money, and then she finally has enough money and pays this other family to take her all the way to Utah. And then she comes to Utah as like just a 12-year-old girl, and then goes to work and ends up like a matrix of this, family that did very well out in Utah. And it was just like this tiny little kid, fought all of that, and then ends up out in, in the Great Basin-ish area, like that's what the American spirit is. Like, mm-hmm. But if you think about the amount of risk and fear and hardship and struggle and all of that goes into that. Well, our culture, our modern culture, we don't just not support that. We actively like try to like we work hard to keep that away from people,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like we try to nerf everything. And I know this was like a line in the 80s or 90s and stuff with comedians, but it's true. Like we try to soften everything, you know. Like we act like some little kid, whether it's a girl or a boy, performing better than their peers in sports is like this magical thing. Yeah. So like, well, I mean, dude, these kids were doing incredible. Like that girl walked from St. Louis to Utah. She didn't have shoes. She just walked across the whole. And dude, I mean, almost crazy.
I know grown ass men who wouldn't be able to do that today.
I don't know. Put it like this: I don't know a grown ass man that would be able to.
Yeah, exactly. When I said that, I was like, yeah. Oh, that sounds like I'm implying I could do that. No, I couldn't.
For real. But that was what Americanism was, right?
Yeah.
And we've not only have we lost sight of that, but like we've lost the respect for it, mm-hmm. which is more important. Like, yeah, we've, you know, like when cultures become wealthy, they're going to lose like sight of where they came from. But if they lose respect for the people that were there before, like that, of their descendants, then they become decadent, you know. Like when Chief Joseph,
are you alluding to, what is it, that historian, he wrote a book, From Dawn to Decadence, I think, about how decadence is like the tail end of a civilization and it's a byproduct of becoming wealthy. What you just said reminded me of that. Sorry.
No, I'm not. But you know, one of the many hours and hours conversations that I have with Lafayette Lee, he's probably read that. Okay. You know, so maybe that's where. But yeah, man, it's we're at this place where let me put it like this: when Chief Joseph was, I think his name was General Howard, but I think it was Charles Howard. They called him the one-armed general, the one-armed Christian general, the Nez Perce called him. When he was like trying to help in his mind, help the Nez Perce like avoid sort of the fate of the Crow and the Comanche and some of the other. They were going back and forth, and they were in the Wallowa Valley, right? And Chief Joseph said, a man that would leave his father's grave is like no better than an animal. You know, he just kept saying that over and over and over again. They were just sort of talking past each other on this. Because he was trying to put them on like a reservation, of course, you know. And it was supposed to be a big, strong reservation, but it didn't end up that way. But anyway, he kept saying that. And now the older I get, the more I understand like Chief Joseph's perspective, you know. Because if you don't understand if you don't understand the culture that you were born of, and then you don't revere the people who made it, like what do you have? What do you have left? Like, I guess you can go to Mars. What the hell is that? Like, that's just like trying to build some new thing. Like that's great. I hope we can do that. But what does that say about, like, that doesn't do anything to preserve, like I don't know, man. Like all these people who fought and died to give us this, they still matter. Like even if they won't, like, and if you don't think they do, then boy, you're playing with fire. I really think so. Because they probably knew stuff that we don't understand, and that's the whole thing. Is like loving the grave of your father is like understanding their stuff that you don't understand, you know, or respecting that there's stuff that you don't understand, and that maybe one day when you're 80 you will, you know. It's like that. It's like, I don't know, as I age I feel more and more like, you know, this like return to tradition in this sort of way is like more important than I ever thought before. So
no, it makes sense. Yeah, like, and I see it with like within even like the immigrant culture that I come from. So like my mom came here from Ocean, Mexico. And like the thing is like she came here in a period of time when Ocean, Mexico was in a period of martial law. So she couldn't go back. So we had an authoritarian government in there. And so she was like, I think 2 years through school or whatnot, college and everything, and she got accepted to a university, and they were like, okay, we'll let you into an American university, but you have to start college all over again. We won't acknowledge the work you did before. And now you take that to a kid these days
for real.
and say that,
yeah.
they'd be up like throwing up flyers and whatnot. My mom was just straight up like, that I usually keep personal stuff off the internet, but this is a fitting analogy. My mom was just like, what do I need to do to get to where I need to be? Let me do it and check the boxes along the way. And like you see that with a lot of folks coming over. Like I've had tons of friends from Latin America and Brazil here in Texas, and like they're all either children of immigrants themselves or whatnot. And like when you see folks throwing around like Latinx and stuff like that, like one of my buddies' dads was just like, no. Like that was all he had to say about that.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And we should talk about this one time too, but that's the same thing, like growing up around the Great Basin stuff, the immigrants, Mexican immigrants mostly around there, same thing, like they have more of that pioneer spirit than almost any other American you ever be around. It's because they're looking for that frontier, right? That frontier. And that's why I think what your mom's probably like, she's looking at it like, okay, yeah, whatever, I got to do a whole bunch of annoying stuff that I shouldn't have to do, but whatever, the payoff's going to be worth it, and it's like a small sacrifice.
Yeah
exactly. Like the average kid can't even handle a small sacrifice in America. No,
Yeah, I see it in lots of various avenues that we talk about.
Yeah, no, like that's the thing. It's so annoying. Is like most immigrants are better Americans than like the American. Like if you had to ask me, like let's say I was trying to hire to do like ranch work or whatever. Like if the choice was between some immigrant kid from, I don't know, like Boise or something, or excuse me, some average kid from like Boise or something, or some immigrant kid from Mexico or Nicaragua or whatever, I'm gonna take that kid every time. Like if I really have to I'm gonna take that kid every time.
Yeah,
every single time.
I see that in other areas too, man. Like it's wild. And like one thing I've noticed too is like, and I've seen it with like friends who are like same generation sons or daughters of immigrants too, that I grew up with, like they get sucked into this complacency that a lot of like Americans are in these days. And it's crazy that we have it so good in this country. Like you alluded to this with the Whole Foods thing, trying to get rid of food. Like we're the only country in the world that has it so good. We're trying to give away rights, the Second Amendment being chief among them. And we're also trying to get rid of the productivity of like one of our core industries that made us great. And like, if you remember back to the Batman movie, Bane, he has that line where he goes, "Oh, victory has defeated you." That's how I feel about us culturally. Like we've been defeated by victory.
That's a good line. I've never watched that, but that's a great line.
Yeah, it's sad, but like the embers are still there in certain pockets. You just kind of got to look for it, and like, go ahead.
No, man, and you're right. And the thing is, we're gonna have to like kick a whole bunch of kindling on those, because if we don't, then we're gonna be in big trouble. And I'm not like a doomer, so I'm not like going down that route. But if we don't, like, it's gonna be bad. It's gonna be bad. And like, I guess what I'm trying to say is we're gosh darn lucky that there is embers still.
Yeah,
and there is, and I believe that. So
I agree. All right, question 8. This one's getting a little more lighthearted. So Trip Mitchell 5 wants to know, if they made a movie about Braxton, who would he want to play him, and why is it Denzel Washington?
Yeah, man, I think Denzel would be great. Like that guy's pretty cool.
Man on Fire and Training Day. I watch those two movies like every year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who else okay. I don't think anybody should be making movies about like a broke down cowboy in Idaho, but
I want to see it. I want to see the movie. Glass Factory.
Yeah, no, yeah, okay. Denzel would be cool. Yeah, I'm done with that.
No, really. Who would you pick? Who would you pick?
Eddie McClintock, because he's my buddy.
Eddie,
But
I don't know who that is.
Eddie be cool.
Where? Eddie, oh, okay, I recognize him. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I don't know. Actually, you know what? As I age, Eddie or I would Kevin Costner wouldn't bother me.
Yeah.
All that much.
Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner would be my pick, aside from some obvious problems with that cast.
Well, he seems like a pretty cool guy, and he actually rides a horse okay. Because that would bother me, Like if I had to watch him, I'm not saying he's great, but he actually rides pretty good. So that'd be a Robert Duvall. I love that guy.
Yeah,
and he rides okay too.
All right, cool. Now we're getting to my last. Usually, how this works is I try to give Twitter a voice to be able to ask their own questions. Sometimes you get serious questions, sometimes you get playful questions, but now we're getting into my end. So this one's for me. So what I'd love to learn more about, like, what projects you're currently working on. Actually, let me take a step back. I'd actually love to hear more, so I've got followers on YouTube who aren't on Twitter, and I got followers on Twitter who are on YouTube also. So for the folks who only know me from YouTube, like they probably haven't seen me talking about your book or putting it out there on Twitter. So why don't you give I'm going to add it in the description, but why don't you give a too long didn't say overview of the Glass Factory, and then I'd also love to hear about what projects you're working on in 2021 and what we could expect coming down the pipeline.
The Glass Factory is a book. It's not a war book. That's the thing. I hate when people think it's a war book. It's not a war book. There's not a lot about war in that book, I don't think. There's a little bit, but it's not a war book. It's a book about finding yourself through struggle and making it through chaos and brokenness, and in some sense doing the prodigal son thing, getting back to what you were before, even though you never thought you'd ever get there again, so it's like that. Yeah, I would say it's a journey from the underworld back to whatever means something to you or is important to you, getting back to that life, and the guy before was talking about principles, and I think that's the journey, right? It's trying to get back to living a principled life, which I fail at all the time, but that is the goal, is to live a principled life. So it's that. Yeah. So it's sort of burrowing out of brokenness into something new, and not in a lame, butterfly sense, not crawling into a cocoon and somehow just processes make you something better. It's not like that, man. It's you burrow into that hole, and then guess what? Your ass has to crawl out of it. That's how it works. No one's gonna rescue you because you're in a hole and you lay around and say the right words.
Yeah,
I say that's kind of the Glass Factories.
And it's to tie it back to what we were talking about earlier about Americanism. I think that path of redemption, as well as being able to have the freedom not just to take risks, but the freedom to fail as well and pick yourself back up and try again. I think that's also we were talking about what Americanism is. I think everything in your book and everything that you just talked about, that's all tantamount to what being an American is as well.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'll take that. I think that's true. Yeah.
So modest.
No, I don't know. This is one place where I'm willing to be, not humble. I do think that is the American spirit, shining through. I think it's only that belief. It's only the belief in that, in some sense, that pulled me through it, and I think other people could stand to do better based on, through that through that would be a better way to say it. So far as 2021 projects, a bunch of people have been hitting me up about, when I say a bunch, 10, 15, maybe it's even 20 now.
That's a bunch. That's a bunch.
About whether it's DMs or even actually on the TL, about trying to do a sort of a I don't know, like a working on a ranch experience. I'm not interested in playing this like dude ranch game. I hate that stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's dumb. But I have been in talks with some people, and the idea, like I've seen this enough times that I thought maybe I'll talk to some people. But the idea of like trying to help people in such a way that was like, come out and do some hard work and learn some skills that might feel cool to them or whatever, and leave with something like valuable when they go home. So we are working on that. That's like a total real thing
that's awesome.
Yeah. So we're working in that direction right now. And then of course I have a book that I hope comes out in 2021, but books are glacial, and is what it is. I hope it comes out in 2021. I kept telling people I was hoping it would be out in June. There's no freaking way in hell that book's coming out in June. But I do hope it comes out in this year, because I don't want it to suck, right? Like,
what's can you talk about like what your next book's going to be about? Or do you want to
book is all. No, it's about like everything we talked about, like American culture and where Americana, the idea of Americana, really came from. And like I guess it's what it is to be an American, like the dime store novels, right? Like they didn't sell in Payson, Utah, they sold in New York City.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like the idea that the West was just there was what helped shape this place, or what helped shape this place. And so I'd like to kind of do that again, like remind people that like it's still there. It's still there. Like whether you believe in it or not, it's still there. So
is this going to be fiction, nonfiction?
Yeah, it'll all be nonfiction. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
I do have a fiction project I've been working on. I sent to my friends like Lafayette Lee, and I'm sure he's tired of me sending him, novel ideas. But yeah, I am working on. One day I am going to write a fiction book, but right now it's still nonfiction because I'm too stupid to write a good fiction book. So I just keep plugging away on this nonfiction thing.
We're gonna have to agree to disagree on that one, Brad. anything you put out, man. Myself, and your legion of fans will be standing there right behind you, man. No, I'm really excited to see. Like I after talking with you at length over the weekend, like I'm really excited for what this is gonna mean, what this year is gonna be for you, man. Like you got a lot of you're making all the right decisions, all the right moves, and any way me or the gun Reddit can help. Same offer I made to Demp in the Great Possum Wars with Terry. we pledge the Trap House pledges the banner.
Did he win that, or where were we at on that?
I don't know. I kind of came to it late, and then I uploaded some thermal footage of me murking a possum, and I was like,
I saw it. Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, my last question is about Glass Factory. So, is there this is kind of embarrassing for me, but is by chance is there an audiobook version coming out? Because I can't read or write.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Mr. Makes like anyway. Actually, yes, we've been working on. We've had a lot of people ask, and I've been trying to figure that out. We are working, but honestly, I'll be square with you. It's like trying to get sound quality to where it's not terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Because like doing a podcast is one thing, but like if it's an audio book, you're asking somebody to sit there for 8 hours. Like I just don't want the quality to be bad. Mm-hmm. So it costs a little bit of money to get stuff squared away. Yeah, we were gonna hire somebody to read it, and then people were like DM and like, don't do that.
Yeah,
don't do that.
I was gonna say it needs to be read by you.
So unfortunately, because I'm a dummy horse trainer, then I'm gonna have to build that in my basement. I'm actually been working on building that in my basement. So, but as you build it, it's like sound tiles and it takes some work. And I've got a friend, Drew, who's coming up to try to help me get the audio right. And actually, when he's up, he's gonna help me. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but you can't just like stick them sporadically. Like, kind of has to be a thing.
Yeah, it's like a science of like how sound moves and bounces off of things. It's outside of my wheelhouse. I literally just have them laying in front of my laptop because I am talking into a window right now, and so the reverb hits me back. But no, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. So we are gonna do it, but I just don't want to be crappy, you know. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to not suck. So we are working on it, and Drew is supposed to be coming up because there's like a documentary project, and so he's supposed to be up at the end of this month, and then hopefully we'll be dialed in. And once we're at that stage, then we'll just be reading it, and hopefully it'll go. And so yes, that's gonna happen. Like, that's a thing that's gonna happen, and people can do that. So yes,
yeah, I've got 12 Audible credits in my account right now. I'm willing. Yeah, because I usually read or listen to between like 3 or 4 books a month, and because I'm not driving as much, that number's gone down.
Just keeps hitting your credit card.
Yeah, so I'm just stacking credits. Dude, I will gladly get all of the Braxton Audible releases. No, that's awesome, man. That's a huge milestone too. Like, not just having a book out, but also like having the audio version, because like I know a lot of folks in my world, like we listen to books more than we read them, largely because like commute, we can do it while we're working. I don't listen to music when I'm at the gym. I listen to books.
I do that when I work out too. Same thing.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I listen to like coloring books, but I do listen to I don't want to give anybody like the wrong impression here. You know, it's like follow the 1 to the 2 and then to the 3, and then, at the end you have an elk. Cool, you made an elk.
Oh, I just made it through the Bernstein Bears, man. Have you if you haven't, you should check it out.
Bro, I gotta I wish I had it right here. Oh yeah, okay, when I get my studio done, I have a Teddy Ruxpin.
Oh yeah,
when we were kids. I'm gonna put that behind. Yeah, okay.
This thing's dangerous. I remember those being hard, like the where you insert the tape. I remember banging my head on that thing a bunch of times as a kid.
So when my show comes out, I'm gonna have my Teddy Ruxpin and a bunch of coloring books. All these nerds put all their books behind them, how smart they are and shit. I'm gonna have Teddy Ruxpin and coloring books behind me, and they're like a rope.
Yeah, I've got my bookshelf there. I've got a Cactus Jack action figure.
I saw that. I had lunch with that guy one time. By the way.
Oh, really?
2 times, but
how did your path cross with Mick Foley? That's got to be a story.
Well, it was I got wounded, and he's actually a really, at least was, I think he probably still is, a really big supporter of that. He spent a lot of time with Walter Reed. He was a super nice guy. He would come and hang out, and yeah, that was how. And we went and had lunch, and he's a cool guy, man. He's a super nice guy. I was into wrestling when I was like a kid, that kind of wrestling.
Same.
Then I got out of it, but I didn't even really know who he was. But he was, anyway, a super nice guy. Very, very nice guy. Very, very nice guy.
That's cool.
So no matter how much dumb shit he says on Twitter, give him a break, because he's a nice guy. I promise you. I promise you, he's a nice guy.
Yeah, I used to live out by Walter Reed. That's crazy. That's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear Mick Foley. Mick Foley was one of my heroes growing up. I read his book too, or his first one rather, when I was in middle school. But yeah, dude, those are all the questions, and that is a wrap for the latest episode of Trap House Den. So Braxton, where I'm gonna put links to your book, your Twitter, and anything else in the description. But let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth. Where can people find you?
You know what would actually be cool is if people on this would subscribe to my YouTube, because we're about to start building that. We're working on the back end, and there's going to be like real stuff. come out on YouTube. So please subscribe to my YouTube, which I think is just Braxton McCoy.
Braxton
I don't think it's too hard to find.
Okay.
And I guess you can follow me on Twitter, but mostly YouTube would be really awesome. And of course, if you buy the Last Factory, that'd be cool. Then we'd know each other a little better, whenever you get on the YouTube, because we have some cool stuff coming out, and that's a promise.
Awesome. Yeah. So I've got, for folks who don't want to switch over yet, I have got a link to Braxton's YouTube, Twitter, and Amazon book that you can purchase on Amazon. So just expand that description, click, and subscribe. Let's get this king on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Yeah, that'd be something. Thank y'all very much.
All right, brother. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, bro.